Hey Eurovision fans, it's Tom Kuntu from Shanghai back for another Eurovision reaction video. The running order for the first semi-final of Eurovision 2022 has been announced. I'm going to give you my analysis of how it looks and how it could possibly change things in Turin. So let's kiki. As always, you can use the time bar if you want to skip to a particular part, and there's timestamps in the description as well. So if you weren't aware, since 2013, there's been this new thing where the running order has been decided by producers. I think it's one of the best things to ever happen to Eurovision. It really does make a lot of sense when you think about it. You don't want a lot of songs with the same vibe put back to back. For example, this year with Armenia, Croatia, Portugal, Iceland, which have very similar vibes, you definitely want those songs to be spaced out as much as possible. There is still the first half and the second half, which is one of the things the producers need to consider, but now they're able to pick the order within. I think it makes for a much, much better show. Now, obviously at this point, the only information we have is the song and the artist. We have a couple of live performances to go by. When the countries are submitting their plans, though, they're giving information like the color schemes they're using, how many people are on stage, how much equipment is going on and off. So keep in mind that there's only 35 seconds allowed between entries to get everything on and off. And actually they're going to be using some of the same team that they used in Rotterdam. I believe the guy who did the running order is Dutch. So they need to take that into consideration. Keep in mind that the ad breaks are after the 6th and 12th song. And you can actually see that in the running order this year. If we look after Ukraine, so there's going to be an ad break after Ukraine, and you see we've Bulgaria after that. That obviously Bulgaria is a rock group, so we have to bring in all the instruments on. That makes sense. And funnily enough, the second ad break comes after Denmark, again giving them a little bit more time to remove all the instruments afterwards. So they're the things that the producers are needed to consider. Also, they've got to consider the tone of the song, the tempo, whether it's got like more of an ethnic feel, or so it's not just about varying songs. There's also just like a large practical element to it. So we're starting off with Albania. I think it's a good opening song. The first spot actually has a very good qualification record because they tend to put a good song there. So this is the producers saying that they think Albania is a good song to open. It starts off slow and then it builds up into something exciting, which is a perfect type of song to open. You want something that kind of like lulls you in with a little bit of quietness and then builds up into a kind of a bit of a party song. So it's a really, really great opener. An interesting comment that I saw as well on Weebly Blocks was that they're talking about how Albania's show is kind of like a little bit more dark colors, a bit more like sinister looking, and I think that's the reason why they put the second song as Latvia. So even though it's up tempo as well, the color palette is going to be a lot brighter, more vibrant colors, so it's going to be a bit of a contrast to Albania. Obviously now Latvia being in that second slot really puts them in a difficult situation to qualify. I'm not going to talk too much about qualifications now because I want to do that in my qualification video, which I'm currently writing. I'm going to probably film that tomorrow, because I'm really limited by the light. I've got no lighting in this room, so I can only film during the day. But yeah, I'm hoping to plan that tomorrow, which is Saturday. I think it's really going to put Latvia in a really difficult spot. I kind of understand why they put it in that second position, though. I think some people thought it was going to be opening, but do you really want open Eurovision with someone saying, I eat veggies and pussy? I don't know if they're going to be allowed to say it yet, but possibly it could have been one of the first words out. I don't think that's how they wanted the competition to start. We've got another Baltic straight after that with Lithuania. I think this is the part of the draw I feel a little bit most confused about, because we've got Lithuania followed by Switzerland. So we've got two kind of very, very slow songs. I think it hurts both of them that they're right beside each other. Lithuania is going to be a nice mix-up after Latvia, because anyone who finds that a little bit too silly or maybe a bit offensive is going to have this like quite classy, quirky song afterwards that might be a good kind of palate cleanser after Latvia. But then Switzerland, I don't know, I just feel like a slow song following a slow song. I actually think this is going to affect Switzerland quite a bit. Fourth spot is very qualifiable from it's very possible to qualify from the fourth spot. Again, I'll go into that in my qualification video, but I do think that this is negatively affecting. In this semi-final, I think Latvia and Switzerland are the most negatively affected. Fifth up, we have Slovenia. So going from very slow Switzerland to just a little bit more pacey, and that disco feel is going to bring up the energy a bit. I don't think this particularly helps Slovenia. I don't really think there's that much you could have done. I think they're going to struggle, especially since they're coming before Ukraine, which is really, you don't want to be either side of Ukraine, because after Ukraine's happened, no one's going to remember the song that was before that, and they're probably not going to remember the song afterwards either. So this is bad for Slovenia and also for Bulgaria, two countries which I think we're going to struggle anyway. We also have our break after Ukraine. So we're going from Ukraine, everyone on a bit of a high, going into an ad break, coming out of the ad break into Bulgaria. I think that bodes particularly well for Bulgaria. Not that, and I think they kind of needed all the luck that they could get. So 7th, actually probably one of the not so good spots in the first half. And then after that we got Netherlands. So Bulgaria is really sandwiched between two of the strongest songs that I think are contenders to win. Definitely win the silent fin final and also win the actual grand final as well. So Bulgaria, yeah, this is a little bit of a nail in the coffin for me. After that, we're going into Moldova. Moldova is going to be a really, really great contrast to Netherlands. Anyone who felt that it was maybe a little bit too serious, they were going to have this really, really, really fun elements. So this very good contrast between the two songs. Also going from a solo female into an all-male group is a nice contrast as well. And then right back into another solo female artist with Portugal. This is where it got really difficult in the first half because they really did have to separate the slow, sad female songs as much as they could. They've decided to go from Portugal into Croatia. Now that's going to be a little bit tough on Croatia being the second slower song. I think that Croatia was already struggling. I think this is really putting them in a tough spot because they're following upbeat Moldova and then a very introspective Portugal, and then I think Croatia's really going to have to do something to kind of stand out here. They're between Portugal and Denmark. I think they need to tailor their staging to the situation that they've been given. The guy doing the gymnastics doesn't work, but there's other things that they can come up with, and they need to go for a different color palette as well. We know that Portugal's going to be going for that kind of like 80s graffiti looking feel, unless they've made changes now. We've got this information we have from the national final, but nobody is tied down to their national final staging. They could be going for a different color palette. So again, that's another thing we need to factor in with this draw, is they know what colors are coming and they're trying to break them up. Last year we saw an absolute shitload of that neon pink and blue, and the producers were like, oh crap, we need to separate all these people, otherwise everyone on social media is going to be talking about how the color is the same color palette for 4 songs in a row. So that's other information that we don't know about what's been submitted. Going into Denmark then, we've got again the rock group. I assume that the fact they've been put before in the break that they're going to keep having all the instruments and whatnot on the stage, which I haven't released my Denmark video. I have filmed it, I just haven't edited it, but yeah, I thought their staging was too boring. I don't mind them having instruments on stage, but they need to have a more interesting storyline on the stage with them if they're going to have a shot. And then we've got the ad break going into Austria to kind of wake people up again. A little bit worried for Austria that they're right after the break. Obviously that doesn't affect the jury, but it might affect the televote a little bit. I do feel like Austria is relying on the televote, so I wonder could that be just a small detriment to them. From the intensity of Austria into Iceland, another of the slower songs. So we've got Portugal and Croatia, and then we have a little bit of gap to Iceland. So Iceland's got a decent spot here because it's after Austria, so it'll stand out for being something a little bit more calmer and down to earth. But then it's before Greece, which is probably a little bit more, it's a ballad as well, but it's got a little bit more of a build in it, whereas Iceland is more smooth. So I think this is probably the best that they could have done with this second half of the first semi-final, which was really, really tough to organize. Then coming into subwoofer, I think a lot of people thought that subwoofer were going to be closed. This is probably the one thing I disagree with the most. They've decided to close with Armenia. I'm not particularly sure why. I think it's a bit, I wouldn't say the song is a bummer. I wouldn't say that it's like the happy note that you probably want to finish or conclude a semi-final with. It does have a kind of like end of your life or end of an era feel to it, so maybe that's what they're looking for. Or maybe they were literally like, we've got so many slow women, we can't put subwoofer at the end because we need subwoofer to sandwich 2 songs. But I think that's probably the only explanation I can think of, is that like they were desperate for anything with a bit of tempo in the second half. They only had Austria and Norway to work with, so they had to put them really as 2 bookmarks and then separate all the sad girls. That's the only logic I can see behind it, because we always have a fast song, high tempo, high energy sound to close. I think they probably wish that maybe Latvia had been moved in and they could maybe swap Latvia and Iceland or something like that. That would have worked really well, but obviously they can't tinker in that way. So closing off is Armenia. I don't know if that's going to help them. They're coming after subwoofer. I do think that song is a little bit of danger. Being last is usually good, but keep in mind Triana Park came last in their semi-final last spot, so it doesn't guarantee you anything. Overall, I think that the producers have done a good job. Again, we won't know how good a job they've done until we've actually seen, and a lot of anything that seems a little bit off or weird we'll understand when we see the color palettes and what's actually on stage and what's going on. Obviously, there's a lot of information we don't have. I have to admit, I think the producers generally do a really, really good job at organizing the show. The final last year was brilliant. It just felt so smooth and it had highs and lows, and I think they do a really, really good job. And this new rule they brought in 2013 is just really makes tons and tons of sense. You're always gonna have a couple of people who are pissed off. Like, I haven't heard anyone from Latvia and Israel who've got the dreaded number 2 slot. I haven't heard them complaining. Someone's got to get the 2 slot, to be honest. I think even if your song is really, really good, it should be able to qualify from any spot. Like Euphoria, Arcade, they would have qualified no matter where you put them. But yeah, I can see if you're a borderline person, it can sometimes be the nail in the coffin. That means that you aren't going to make it, but what can you do about it? You can't just have 3 minutes of silence saying, nobody wanted to take this slot, please come back in 3 minutes. Yeah, I think that's the best I could have done. Anyway, let me know what you think about the running order. Who do you think it screwed over the most? Who do you think it benefited the most? Let me know in the comment section down below. I will be going into my qualifications. Don't worry, I love doing my qualification videos. I got my little board with all my things, so I'm going to be using that to help me decide where everybody goes. I'm working with the running order and historical qualification records to help me decide who I think pre-rehearsal will and won't qualify. Okay, so leave a comment in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. I'm seeing another Eurovision reaction video very soon. Goodbye.